Hey, welcome everybody. It's time for our favorite show, This Week with Wendy, the only show that shows you the real SoCal estate of mind. With your host, Wendy Ross, who after decades of working at real estate brokerages in Silicon Valley and Orange County, she decided it was time to create a different real estate model, and so she did. That's when Veracity Real Estate was born. Time was right for a renewed commitment to bespoke client advocacy at all price levels. That's something you don't see in high-price markets like Southern California. And through it all, Wendy has built a company of data-driven real estate investment advisors who see themselves as truth seekers and truth tellers in the market. And the truth be told, I'm always amazed at the truth she's passing on. So today is no different. We're going to get Wendy to share some more truths, this time about herself. Is that true, Wendy?
Yeah, I'm a little intimidated.
Okay, this is the backstory of who Wendy is. So I'm going to actually do something we never get to do. I get to appear on camera. So here we go.
Yay.
Poof! There I am over in the control room. So it's kind of weird. We're trying this out on for those watching the YouTube version of it. Wendy's
like
in
a
the
split
studio.
screen, yeah.
I'm in and we got kind of a split screen going here. So welcome, Wendy.
Thank you. And can I just point out, I was so touched that you introduced me as not one of, but your favorite show.
Today, you're my favorite show. Absolutely.
That's awesome. I'm going to wallow with that all day long. I'm Paul's favorite today. I love it. I love it.
Well, you know what's fun is we don't often get to know much about the show hosts. They come on, they talk about, it's all about the guests, and we get that. But you really have turned this into kind of a richer conversation than just real estate. That's what has surprised me about this show. It's friends, it's partners, it's other people in the community, and they share some intimate details of where they live and why they live there and what home means to them. It's more than just a numbers show.
That's so true. And I think people forget that what I do is intimate. You nailed it. Yeah. It's someone's home, buying their home, selling their home, parting with something they've lived with so emotionally often. It's intimate. So yeah, the conversations get really heavily nuanced, don't they?
Only Wendy would have somebody come on and talk about intimacy in the bedroom, and then a chef, your friend the chef who comes on, you know, that kind of that warm intimacy of cooking with your friends and all that stuff. That's what a home is. I remember years ago, I'll get off topic for 1 second and we'll come back, but I remember when I bought my first home and I'm looking at all these tracks, like in Ladera and all this stuff here, and the videos that they would prepare. And it was never about the building.
Oh, sure.
It was always about, you know, there was apple pie in the oven and the dogs running through, and you could just, it was an emotional story.
Oh, yeah. There's the puppies running across the field and the kids hiking on the trails.
Yeah. And you're thinking, yeah, that could be me. That could be my story here. Well, today, let's do your story. Are we still going to do a wrap-up of the market here today?
Yes, of course. Right. You know me, I got to nerd out for just a few minutes.
Please.
Let's do a quick recap of last week. And as I've been saying, regrettably, almost every week, it's kind of more of the same. I mean, this last week, it was unwelcome data, but not unexpected because it's been the same. Our new listing inventory fell 6% instead of rising. We need it to double or triple, and it fell a little bit.
Can I ask you just one quick question on that? Because you say that every week. I would think that in rising prices, dramatically rising prices, isn't that Orange County gone up like 16 or 20% or something last year? Some crazy number.
Yes.
I would think everybody would be racing to take advantage of it. I'm going to sell my house while the selling's good.
Yeah.
And yet nobody's selling.
This analysis paralysis is out there. I mean, I think we need to face the fact that baby boomers just aren't vacating their homes like they used to. So that's a huge segment of our market.
Right.
Builders can't build. I mean, they may want to, but at this point, there's scarcity of land. Communities are still fighting over who's going to allow infill and who's not.
Right.
You know, are we going to allow the shops at Mission Viejo to become mixed use and have, you know, low cost rental units? Yes, no.
Right.
So the back and forth, it keeps suppressing the inventory.
We had somebody come on our show, I won't call him out, but after the show, he was saying, I think most of these malls are going in one way, shape, or another.
I agree.
Mission Viejo, Brea Mall, Main Place Mall. We had somebody from Main Place Mall. These were iconic properties that were built that the community saw as a great asset and built around them. And now, because we changed shopping patterns and the land is so much more valuable, do we need a May Company
Exactly.
store down the street? I don't know.
Exactly. Well, and Main Place is a great example because they've already had several plans approved for
Yes.
a great deal of density and mixed use, and it's going to be lovely. I mean, it's not going to be just this big, concrete monolith. There's
Right.
actually going to be parks and green space and places for communities to gather because if nothing else, we've learned that our intimate connections with one another matter because we were deprived of that through COVID and now we crave it.
Absolutely. Sorry, I cut off
So
your
back to the numbers.
analysis. Yes.
So new active listing inventory fell 6%, which was a huge bummer. We had 0.5% fewer homes go under contract last week, and I think it's just because there weren't enough to sell. So we didn't sell what we didn't have. And closed sales rose 10% last week over the week before. So the heat is definitely on in this market. And because of all of that, this demand, the list price to closed price ratio increased again, another 2.5% over the prior week, and that pushed the median price up again 2.4% over the prior week. So
Which is at what now?
median price is now $1,050,000.
So, because I got kind of a medium kind of priced house here. It's not the littlest, but it's not a big one. So
Right.
you're saying it's my little teeny, which was kind of a starter home, really, that I never got out of. It still could be worth $1 million.
A nice, well-dressed, tract home built in the late 70s, early 80s can get $1 million today. It's insane. So yeah, I mean, it's taken us 7 days median to sell these homes. So we're still selling in a week. We have less than 500 listings available to sell when we should have 4,000.
4,000.
4,000. Well, during peak season, July, August, historically, we would have 8,000 homes available for purchase in Orange County, and we would sell, maybe 3,000, 3,500 of those.
And you're
It's
saying
insane.
how many? Just I know you keep saying this.
We
but
had
I-
386 come on the market last week. We've got less than 2,000 total inventory in the whole county.
For those watching, my jaw drops.
Right? It hurts. It's painful. And people come to me and actually start arguing with me and debating. It happened again last night at a fundraiser for Ashley Aitken. Go, Ashley. Running for mayor of Anaheim. And I just adore her and her principles. But anywho, someone wanted to debate with me inflation and the politics and the war in Ukraine and
Yeah.
all these pressures and mortgage rates going up. And I said, yes, I know. And they said and in stereo, we said 7 times, yes, I know. And in spite of all of that, home prices here aren't going to soften because there's just still too much pent-up demand
Yeah.
and too little inventory. So it's
Wow.
going to take a long time for this ship to turn. And yeah. Anyway, you know me, I'm bored with this. So moving on.
You're bored with it, and yet we're all just amazed. And I really, part of me still can't believe it. It's come up so fast, and so I keep thinking, all right, come on. I've seen this before 2008. It was never near this high, but it went down 30, 40%. And then so we're all kind of bracing for that. It's got to come down again here. This just can't be sustainable. And yet, I saw somebody on, it wasn't on this show, but it was on another show. The guy that does Flip or Flop, what's his name? Tarek?
Tarek Al-Musa? Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And he was being interviewed right after COVID, after that first year of COVID. And he said, come on, tell the truth. Didn't you think all this was going to crash the housing market? He said, I did.
Yeah.
And it didn't.
Yeah. None of us knew what to expect. And I did not expect a 24-month run like this. This is insane.
It's insane.
And it is literally unsustainable unless it's not. I mean, when you look at
Unless it's not. This is just
when you look at how many people here have money, and again, this interesting conversation last night evolved into us agreeing, actually. There's so much money here, and there's going to be but probably instability in other markets because inflation does that. It makes things wonky.
Right.
Wars, global crises also make markets, wonky and frightens people.
Right.
And when the markets get wonky, what do? They flood into real estate. And I'm like, I can't handle any more demand. There's just not enough here to sell.
Yeah.
If we get increased pressure, we are going to become the Madison Avenue of Southern California.
So, and not for today's show, but what we should talk in the future about this idea of infill. Are we going to find those 70s tract homes in Costa Mesa or Brea are just going to get taken down, and we're going to, you can't, they're all individual owners, but I mean, are we just going to turn them all into something else? Or are we going to find ways to tear down other things we don't use
Senate
anymore?
Bills 9 and 10 passed, which allow throughout the state of California for single-family, one home zoned lots to be able to put 2 and possibly even 4 living units on there. Yet when people try to do that, they're getting pushed back by their neighbors and the communities. And the NIMBYs are coming out with pitchforks and burning crosses and saying, stop it, stop it, stop it. And the NIMBYs need to wake up and understand you can either have your neighbor put a granny flat in back, or you can have a homeless person sleeping on your car on the street.
Right.
What do you
What
prefer?
would you prefer? I would love to see you do a show on that. But today we want to showcase you,
All right.
Wendy
All right.
Ross.
So just be gentle.
Okay. Well,
The
we'll
mic is
try.
yours.
We'll see if we can. We'll see if we can carefully peel back some of the pieces here and look at. The first question I have, and I was thinking hard. What could we ask you here? How did you? You don't look like a data nerd.
No.
You're
No.
attractive, glamorous kind of person. You don't seem like a little wonky.
Oh, go on.
Come
No,
on,
go on.
but you do. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to flatter you, but I'll flatter you a little bit. You don't look like the typical data nerd kind of scientist, and yet you're very data driven and very.
Fair enough.
Yeah. How did you get to be such a data nerd?
Well, I'm a data nerd, I think, primarily because I have a healthy disrespect for authority. And that translates into me not accepting what people tell me is true until I've really fact checked it myself.
There you go.
And for decades, I kind of went along and I read the reports and I was like, all right, this is cool. But I saw a point in time where my experiences on the ground, boots on the ground, as it were, started to differ a great deal from what the local economists were saying was trending and happening in the marketplace. And when I started seeing this divergence, and I realized that they were looking at data after sales had been consummated or contracts had been negotiated and escrows had been opened, and they were missing all the drama and the preamble that came before that.
And so they're behind the curve. They're seeing what already happened.
It's like judging the rate of a freight train when you're only looking at the very last car.
Yeah.
You don't know what happened before,
Right.
and that is important, especially in a market as dynamic as ours.
Or
where,
what's coming next. Look down the track and see where the next one's coming.
Right. When historically we reviewed things in a 30-day increments or monthly or quarterly increments, and now I've actually had to refine it, as you know, to weekly increments because things are moving that quickly. I understood that I need to start doing my own reporting because the data that I'm seeing differs in nuance from what's being reported. And so that kind of forced me down that nerdy trail that I already tended to go after.
And yet you seem to have, it's so clear in these conversations, since the show has come, I've gotten to see a different side of you. You have a real heart for Orange County. Why? This isn't where you're from, I don't think.
No, it's not. I'm a native Californian, but I grew up in Northern California. And I've been here 20 years now. I just realized I had my 20-year anniversary. So it's really, truly, finally home. But because I came from outside, I really saw the rich culture and heritage that's here. In Anaheim and the German and European settlers that were there.
Anaheim, Anna's River, I think it means in German.
Yeah, it's Anaheim. Yeah. And then, of course, the whole Spanish culture, because the Spanish land grants, and, we used to be part of Mexico. And some of my Mexican-American friends are happy to remind me of that. We've just got such a rich culture and diversity here. And then, of course, who's not seduced by this weather?
That's why I came. Let's be honest.
I'm a fan.
It's paradise.
Yeah,
It really is.
I love living here now. I really do. So now when I go home to visit my family, it's no longer home. This is my home.
So your home, did you come from a family of realtors or anything that contributes to your business today? Or are you pioneering new ground for the family here?
If they're listening, I'm sure they're laughing. No, I was born in San Jose, not to realtors. And it's funny because I was thinking about this. I was born in a part of San Jose that was the Almaden Vineyard part. So I grew up near vineyards and these giant casks, where they were fermenting wines and things. And during my youth and my lifespan, that slowly turned into Silicon Valley. So the microchip replaced the vineyards and things.
Right.
And my parents both worked in technology. My mother worked in administrative different types of capacities, and my father is one of those brainiacs, and he would spend all of his time in the 70s and 80s at IBM helping them learn how to write different code and languages for programs. And then in his...
So there's the nerd strain that's coming out here. Yeah.
And I learned later in life that IBM, the amorphous they, and he was an Air Force pilot in Vietnam, they would lend him to the RAND think tank when they had special tasks they wanted to solve.
That's a cool, secretive kind of thing here.
Yeah, there was a lot of, I can't tell you. Daddy can't tell you what he's working on.
So can you tell us a snapshot? I know you've done lots of different things. Real estate's one of them. Mm-hmm. Somebody told me you were in fashion and technology. I know you did stuff in mortgage. Give us the quick
I
snapshot.
was in fashion for a hot second, so we're not going to like really dwell on that. But what's funny
Were you a
is
model or anything? Or
for a minute.
for a minute,
For
okay.
a
All
minute.
right.
But my first job, because you were asking me or commenting, complimenting me, that's been a day of compliments from Paul. People, just saying. It's a
Doesn't come
Wendy
easy.
love day.
I'm from the Midwest. We don't compliment easily
But
here.
you were telling me that you were surprised at how natural I was on air and how
Yes,
comfortable I was with this medium.
very much so.
My very first job while in high school was as a PBX operator. And that happened because I walked into a retail showroom and saw some people who looked like they were important. And as I approached them, I asked if they could tell me where I could go to get an application. And this woman turned around slowly and looked at me and said, "You want to answer the phones?" And I said, "Sure,
Sure.
sure."
Why not?
She liked my voice. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I answered their phones and they liked
Well,
me
you do
so
have a
much.
radio. I mean, I have a radio voice. I practiced it for years, but you seem to have a natural kind of.
It's from my daddy. We don't have shrill, tinny tones to our voice.
No, you don't have a high. It's like
Yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah. No,
Okay.
we don't have that. So most people hate their voices. I hate mine on recordings as well because they do register with more tinny notes.
Right.
But because I started a low register. Anyway,
God,
anyway.
Low Reg used to be a late night DJ here.
Any hoodles. Yeah.
All right, so you
So
did some other things, retail technology. How did you get into mortgage and real estate? I guess you did
Well,
mortgage first and then
everything
real estate.
evolves. What happened was I was working for that store. They promoted me to work in their cash vault, and that was when I think I realized how much I really like numbers. Because I was balancing all their tills at night. And then a couple years later, it was suggested by a friend I go work at a Century 21 office, and I didn't know anything about real estate, but they taught me. I was a sponge and a learner, and so they taught me about how to support the real estate agents. And this is back in the 80s, in pre-technology, and I updated the MLS book. Someone would drive every week and deliver
Yes.
pages of listings. I would call and see if these were still
The
active.
multiple listing service that only realtors had, the secret book that
Right?
listed all the
The
homes.
special secret book. So I did that. I would call and coordinate showings for the agents. I would physically package and deliver escrow opening packages to the escrow company. And the escrow company was like, "Hey, wait a minute. Why are Century 21's files all of a sudden so organized? Who's doing this?" And they hired me. So they recruited me, and I went to work for an escrow control company in Santa Clara. And they would farm me out to their biggest clients to help me create order where there's chaos because it helped them. They were more efficient. It
Yeah.
streamlined their processes. And one of those key accounts was Unified Mortgage, which was actually in the same office tower in Santa Clara. And Jim Douglas was opening their new wholesale division. He's like, "Hey, who's doing all these escrows? This is great. I want her." So he hired me and he taught me wholesale mortgage lending. So I went in cold and didn't know anything, but he taught me everything from printing the credit reports off the fax machine because, of course, the paper was thermal paper.
That's
And he
right.
taught
Didn't
me
last.
risk analysis of the data that was on these credit reports. He taught me the underwriting process, loan programs, documentation, how to actually issue loan documents. I would get in early in the morning and be there with the marketing department who would call Wall Street and find out what pricing was. And I was the voice on the rate line. So when brokers would call the 800 number for our bank, mine was a voice that said, "Hi, welcome to Unified Mortgage. Today is March 22nd. Our interest rates today are 30 years, 30 year at one
See,
point."
you were in
is-
broadcasting even then. I was
Yeah.
calling you even then. Well, I don't know if you see it as one of your secret powers, but this ability to take and analyze data and trends and numbers seems to come from not just your parents who did that for a living, but this training you had on the ground, the hard way, learning it as a trade, not just a theoretical practice here.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is that being raised in Silicon Valley in a very middle class family with two parents who were working very hard and very smart but not making a lot of money,
Yeah.
I had to work. I mean, I had to earn money if I wanted new clothes or nice things or, to eventually buy a car.
Right.
So I really applied myself and I really wanted to learn and I threw myself into this. And it was, I started making pretty good money. And when I started making pretty good money, I started shopping. And this is kind of where this transition for me occurred, and it was an important metamorphosis because I went to a fashion show in Stanford Shopping Center, and I was the models.
You remember the place.
I remember it was Saks Fifth Avenue, people.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was at Saks Fifth Avenue in Stanford, and it was really poorly attended, and I loved that what the models were wearing. They just grabbed me and they dragged me backstage, and I started trying on all the samples. Well, they went back and they told their agent, Lynn Toya in San Francisco, "There's this really cool gal, and she should be a model, and she's really fun, and this is her name, and we got her phone number." So Lynn Toya started calling me, And my roommates were like, do you understand that a modeling agency in San Francisco
It's calling you.
is calling you?
Yeah.
What the hell is the matter with you?
Yeah.
So I finally wrapped my brain around the message she was sending me, and that is, smart girls can be models too. It's not shameful to use your face to make money. And so I did that simultaneously on weekends when I could do it while still working in the mortgage industry. And then, the stock market crash, Black Monday in 1987 happened, and it laid waste to my industry. And it was not long after that I was left looking for a new job, a new industry.
The industry has been, of all the industries I come across, and I sit at the intersection of so many conversations here, sitting in this chair here, I marvel how anybody can stay in real estate, because or mortgages, when it's hot, it's hot.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, you can't crank it out fast enough.
Right.
When it's not, giant mortgage companies fold up and go away. Home builders go out of business. Realtors go find another career. I mean, it seems to be just boom or bust cycle here.
It can be really arduous. You really need to be tenacious. You need to be nimble. Yeah, and you have to reinvent yourself. And that's what happened to me in 87. I'm like, all right, I'm in my 20s. I've done really primarily only this. This is what I know. What am I going to do? And I relocated to Texas because my mom had moved there to reinvent myself. And 2 months after I got there, I was in a major head-on car accident.
Oh.
So I'm planning to reinvent my life, and my body was crushed. They literally had to cut me out of the car. The engine block came in and pinned my legs. Both of my knees were rebuilt. My face was shredded. Half of it was left in the windshield.
Oh my goodness.
And I had to learn who I was and how to be a physically whole person again. And what I didn't know that I didn't know was that the jobs I got before, I didn't get just because I was hardworking and I applied myself. I got them because people thought I was pretty. And it was a really, really weird lesson because I wasn't pretty. I was so not pretty that when I could, I was blinded for a while. My eyes were patched shut and I couldn't walk. And when I could finally walk.
So you have to find out there's more there than just a pretty face, right?
Yeah, I would drag myself through the grocery store and children would look at me and start crying and hide behind their mothers. And the mothers would turn and glare at me with these looks like, how dare you even be in public? And I was shamed for even being in public. And I'm like, wait a minute. And it was incredibly revelatory for me to understand that we judge each other unconsciously, I think most, but sometimes consciously, by how we look.
Yes.
And that was really, really, really important for me to understand.
And when something that you rely upon, whatever it is, many of us, you think you're smart, you think you're pretty, you think you're lucky, you think you're good at sports or something.
Yeah.
And so things come easily because you have, many people don't have those talents, but those that do, it becomes an easy thing. I think of many people in my life like that.
Yeah,
and when that's taken away, then who am I if I'm not smart, silly, funny, pretty, whatever?
Right. And I think a lot of people, and I'm not blaming, I'm just saying, I think sometimes we discount the influence our family has. If we have a big family who's been in the community for a long time and we have a vast network, that does give us an assist other people don't have.
Oh, clearly.
And perhaps we need to see each other with different eyes. I mean, not in my case literally, but I think that experience, on top of the escrow and the lending and the real estate, this experience of learning how people relate to me as a human being and at a time a broken human being, has really helped to inform me, help my clients in nuanced ways.
Well, one of the other things that's helped is that you seem to have more than just one market experience. So many realtors I know, this is what their parents did, this is what they do. They know this, and that's all they know.
Right.
You seem to know a lot more, including other markets. Does that help, the fact that you're in Northern California and Texas and other places here?
It has helped a little bit, and the fact that I just start to get voracious about data. I still look at what's going on in Silicon Valley and compare and contrast, and I still look at the distribution of wealth in different areas and compare and contrast, and it does help me inform my advice for my clients and how I advocate for them. And unfortunately, what it tells us now is that our market is not yet as expensive as Silicon Valley from where I come.
So there's room to go.
There's runway in front of us, unfortunately.
Hard to believe it.
Yeah, my father's home is almost identical to mine in terms of size and age and everything else. He has a slightly larger lot, and it's worth about double what mine is.
Yeah, just a house that was probably built in the 70s or
No, no,
something.
no. Mine was built in 48.
48,
I'm
so
sorry. Mine 47, his 48.
so even older. Wow.
Yeah, even older.
Just a regular kind of tract house that was built back
Yeah.
in the day.
Yeah. The only differences I can tell you that I've noticed between our area in Southern California and Northern is that culturally, our communities up there are more blended and integrated, and here we're more pocketed. So you'll see a
Yes.
pocket of one culture, a pocket of another culture. I mean, even in Irvine, which I think, from my observation, is probably the most blended, it's still a bit pockety, and
Hmm.
it's not as completely integrated as you see up there. And down here, there are far more licensed people in my industry. So
Oh,
a lot,
everybody, the guy,
right?
the woman at the supermarket. Oh, by the way, I'm a real estate broker on the
Right.
side.
I do this
Yeah.
part time. Um,
Is this something you can do just part time?
I don't think
And
so.
I
I
that
don't.
notion that I'm going to because I'm trying to think of my own life. I've only ever bought two or three houses. Bought a
Right.
condo and a house, and maybe one. I guess that's just two.
Yeah.
And I've lived in it for, well, God, well, how many years now? 30 years or something.
Exactly.
And so I only do this a couple of times. Is
Right.
the point? Am I going to trust that service to
Hmm.
somebody who only does this part time?
I wouldn't. I mean, I wouldn't trust my eyes to a
A
doctor
part-time eye
who did it
doctor.
part
Yeah.
time. You know, I wouldn't. I mean, I've got a heart condition. I wouldn't trust my heart to a doctor who's like half retired, does this sometimes. You know, no, I chase the guy at Hogue that's cutting edge because he's my dude.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And you know, there's one more thing before we move on. I want
Okay.
to point out that something that shocked me when I got to Southern California, I know this is going to sound haughty, and it just is. It was my observation, is that up north there is a far greater stigma about being ill-educated or uneducated.
Oh,
And
because
there's,
well, you got Stanford and Berkeley and a million other places. So
right.
the assumption is that everybody's educated
If
and you're
you're,
in high tech. Yeah.
yeah, if you're not well informed and if you don't speak correctly and well, articulately, you are frowned upon. And that's not the case so much here. And that translates into my industry. It's a bit more the Wild West. I mean, people fly by the seat of their pants and spew things that they read on CNN as if it's news here.
Yes.
And that's not okay because it's not, in most cases, relevant.
And the complexity of the transaction too is changed. It
Hmm.
used to be when my dad bought a house, he went down the street, maybe had a realtor show him, but you kind of shook hands and you wrote, I don't know, I didn't see the agreement. I'll bet it was 2-3 pages or something
It
at
was like
most.
3 or 4 pages, exactly.
And okay, and then it was just going to the bank and getting the loan.
Yeah.
The deal, the transaction wasn't much to it. There wasn't much disclosure. They didn't think there was anything to disclose, and there wasn't complex in any way, shape, or form. I'm not saying that was good, but that's just the way it was. Now,
Right.
pages and pages. Last time I bought a home, my head spun.
Yeah.
How many things they wanted me to look at and do it, and I thought to myself, "Wow, I wasn't ready for that complexity."
Yeah. I mean, offers and addendum and so forth. It's not extraordinary to send over a 20-page PDF to a seller's agent.
Page
You know?
PDF, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
All
It's
right, so
nuts.
all the more reason to get pros. I mean, I know
Yes.
we stress this a lot in all these shows here. You can do something that important, that expensive, and not just
Hmm.
financially. This is your home. You seem to approach things with a real empathetic, more than most realtors. Most realtors are transactional. Get the deal, get you in. Well, what's wrong with it? Well, okay, so it's not perfect. You know, you move, go now. You
Yeah.
figure it out later.
Yeah.
We'll fix
Yeah.
it.
Not my problem.
That notion of going to find that forever home, I don't even know if people approach it that way. I'm going to be here for a while, then I'm going to flip it, I'm going to make some money, and I'm going to go get another one. That notion of it, you seem to talk about this more. Where does that empathetic outlook, that home, emphasis on home and not just home sales?
Well, I think a little bit, in part, some of the life experience I shared with you,
Sounds
but
like it, you know.
yeah, I mean, also, I'm a nerd, and even though I'm absolutely cognizant that, for someone who's buying this to occupy it, it's their home. It's their
Yeah.
biggest asset, but it's also the place where they're going to go and they're going to practice their faith there. They're going to raise their children there. They're going to celebrate all of life's events there. I mean, everything happens in
Nobody's
this.
ever said it. They practice your faith. I'm a good Irish Catholic. That notion of, there is something you bring to it more than just your furniture.
Right? If you're Jewish, you're going to have your
Your bar mitzvahs and stuff there.
yeah,
Your,
yeah.
I don't know
Your
all the other.
Shabbat, and you're gonna have all your Friday evening, your family dinners together there on Fridays and then Saturdays, and And
My wife put a little, statue of St. Francis in the back
yes,
and stuff in our garden. I mean, there's
yes,
something more. You imbue. I never thought of that, but you sort of imbue it with your faith,
you
and your
do.
faith in your family and your community. I believe in this community. I believe in us as a family. I believe in something.
It's where you rest your head at night and you recharge and you get ready, however it is that you do that for the next day. It's everything. And I think COVID reminded us
Yes.
of that. And I can't dismiss the fact that, especially now when homes are so hard to find, people are competing for them because very often life threw them a curveball. They
Yes.
have to move,
Right.
and it could be something from their kid got injured. I had a client where
Ooh.
their daughter was suddenly wheelchair bound, and
Oh my
that was a
God.
curveball, and we had to immediately address it and make sure that she could live.
Divorce. You had to do a show on that. That is the biggest curveball.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Divorce. I mean, a breadwinner could lose their job. COVID made some of that happen.
Hmm.
God forbid somebody could pass away. You have to be truly empathetic and dial into what's going on with people's families in order to best serve them, find a home. And that there are many layers to that, from their crisis that they're in now. Are they making good decisions for them? And can I perhaps hearken to my past experience and maybe help them forecast down the road what is going to be important for them past this next 6, 8, 10, 12 months?
So pull out your crystal ball, look ahead. What do you think is coming? And
Hmm.
and I know you're going to say more of the same, but we're always looking. Yeah, yeah, but when? Come on, give me the. We're all looking. Why are we all expecting another shoe to fall? Why are we all expecting bad things to happen? Like we can't just accept that this is the new market here.
Well, when you're older, like me, and
you,
I'm
you were
going to
looking at
drag you
me,
into
but
that
that's
bucket. When you're
right.
older, like us.
Yeah,
I mean, we remember the dot-com crash. We remember the '87 crash. And of
yeah.
course, everyone remembers the 2008, 2009
I remember that
meltdown.
one meltdown.
Right. And people want to believe that what goes up will come down. And it did in 2008. Even in '87, there was a huge adjustment, but nothing like 2008, 2009. I mean, it was a dip, and we recovered. 2008, 2009 was really more like the 1920s in the crash of
It
29.
felt like, and
Yeah.
you knew it was going to take years to. It wasn't that you didn't believe it would come back, but it would take years to come back.
And I believe the economists and the prognosticators who say it's going to be another, 60 to 70 years before an event of that magnitude affects us to that magnitude. And that makes sense. And unfortunately, from what I've read and what I've listened to other smarter people say, war, if we are in fact heading that way, I don't know what we're going to call this in, Ukraine, a police action or whatever, political label we want to put on it.
We're
It's
trying to stay
war.
out of it, but it's it's
It's a
it's
war.
it's threatening to pull in the world into something we
Yeah.
thought was unimaginable.
And it's going to affect the global economy. And of course, the Feds have to increase interest rates here, and inflation is inevitable, as we have said with smarter people than me on this very show. We kicked the can of inflation down the road for 40 years. It needed to come. We needed to, again, kind of reset our economy. And in spite of all of that, because there is so little inventory here, there are so many buyers coming here, and what I still see is they're coming from other areas to us, increasing inventory where they're leaving, but decreasing inventory here. We're going to have this heat on our market, and we're going to have um, inflated prices, and I believe that they're inflated for at least another year, perhaps even 18 months. But on top of it, interest rates are going to go up. So anyone who waits is going to pay more for the house and more to finance it.
And I will. This is not scientific, no data. This is just my own personal view. But once something goes up this big,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to believe it ever really comes down
Mm-mm.
that much.
Mm-mm.
And I say that with gas and everything else. Once
Mm-hmm.
they get used to selling us 5
Mm-hmm.
and $6 a gallon gas, all these other things, it's hard to believe they're just going to say, "Oh, okay, it's back to $4
They're not
now."
going to go back to four. Exactly. And what I think people are forgetting is that, again, like we mentioned earlier, when markets get crazy, people look for something that's safe, like dirt, like real estate.
Yeah.
And again, our aging, booming population, if they want to pull their money out because they're living 20 years longer than they expected, they're going to gobble up rental properties and get rental income. And this is going to put added pressure on our market. And I do think we're going to have some buyers who've been sitting on the sidelines waiting for the shoe to drop, as you had said, and they're
Right.
going to realize, oh crap,
I missed it. Time to
I
get in.
missed it, and loan rates have gone up so much. I better jump in the market. I mean, all of this is going to keep the heat on. It's a pressure cooker, and it's going to remain a pressure cooker. And I don't like it. I wish it would fall, because my job is hell right now. It's
You
hell.
say that, and it's hard to believe because you would think, well, come on, Wendy, you're making more commissions than you ever made on per sale, but you're selling less because there's less to sell.
We're selling less, and we're writing 10 times as many offers to close fewer deals.
Yeah.
And we're dealing with angst and just shredded emotions. I mean,
Right.
buyers who are going in, they're like, come on, what do these sellers want from me? I've waived my appraisal. I've waived my loan contingency. I've given them my firstborn. They can stay 6 months after closing.
Right.
For the love of God, what do they want?
6 months after
Right,
closing.
but it's not what these greedy, rotten sellers want. It's because someone else offered them more.
Yeah.
It's insane. So,
Well, let's take a break and let this settle in and talk about your partners for a second, and then we'll get into the famous
I'm going to go to my happy place.
your happy place. Okay. All right. Stick with us. We're going to just do a quick shout out to our sponsors right now. And as anybody who has listened to the show quickly realizes, Wendy doesn't just have a small, I'm going to call it a Rolodex because I'm going to date myself, but a network of people. She really has surrounded herself with some great strategic partners, like our sponsor of this show today here, who was a guest. Go listen to that episode. You want to get a hoot. I mean, lawyers that tell it like it is. Ford and DiUlio. They're an Orange County-based boutique litigation firm with real experienced attorneys from real big law firms. Partners have founded it, did it on the concept of what they call aligned interests, where your success is directly related to their success, where they're not just there trying to file paper and drag it out and milk it for all they can, where they're really being rewarded for being efficient and effective, and where they engage in the relentless pursuit of their clients' goals. That's in litigation, sometimes mediation, or maybe all the way to trial. If that's what you're looking for, somebody's going to stick with you and get you the best result possible, persistently, patiently, pushing on your behalf. There's a place to find them. It's FordDiulio.com, just like it sounds. FordDiulio. FordDiulio.com. How did you meet Ford DiUlio? I know they're your personal attorneys too, I think, aren't
They are. They're my attorneys. They're my corporate attorneys for Veracity Real Estate.
You're not just saying they're good. You've been believing this for a long time.
Oh yeah. I have no poker face, so I don't.
We know.
I have no poker face.
You can't just come up and say, buy this bracket, and she's making a funny face.
I'd be like
that.
Lucille Ball.
Yeah, right. Remember Lucille Ball?
The vitamins. Yeah. No, I suck. So
Vegevitum or something.
yeah. No, I need to really like buy into somebody before I allow them to be aligned with my brand. And to your point, those guys at Ford and DiUlio, they stick to their convictions. They do everything they can to save clients money. So if there are lesser points, some nuance to a case that aren't necessarily going to further it, they won't waste time on that if they don't have to. They advocate for their clients. They do incredible occasional pro bono work when they have the time.
Yeah, you're talking about some of that
They
they did
support
for
my other
veterans and others.
Veterans
yeah.
Legal Institute. I'm a huge fan, and they're big supporters of that. So
You know
yeah.
what I liked about them, and it showed through. I don't know them. I haven't done business with them, but I know many people who talk of them. That's not the first time I've heard the name. Certainly at the Center Club, where you guys all hang out and stuff, they were very well known. And very
That is
well
where I
thought
met
of.
them at the club. Yeah.
And they give you an answer. They
Yeah.
don't hem and haw and hedge.
Yeah.
Every attorney I've ever met, well, maybe, could be, sort of, depends on, and like, oh my God, just give me an answer. I know it might change, but I want to have some idea. Can I win or can't I
Right.
win?
And
Is it-
sometimes it's not the answer you want to hear, but they'll tell you anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking for. Truth tellers, truth seekers, like we said at the show here.
Boom.
All right, let's get you to tell some of your truths here. I think this is a fascinating idea, this Vanity Fair Proust Questionnaire.
It's fun, isn't it?
It really is. And I applaud whoever, whether it was Kara or you or somebody coming up with it. I wish I could claim credit for including this in the show, but what a clever
Kara
idea.
Stewart, Alta Lunas Media.
Yeah.
My girl.
What a clever idea here. Because it really, I always say to people, when you have guests, to a certain degree, they got a face on. They're trying to tell you what they're trying to tell you. They're trying to make a point. And our job, if we're really going to have real conversations of value to us and the audience, is to get, okay, tell me all that.
Right.
Now let's get past it. I want to get some sense of, I really get to know you. Because we got more than a second or two. So let's spend more than a second or two and get to know Wendy a little bit more. You've put other people in the hot seat. Let's turn the spotlight on you. Where do you call home?
This is my favorite question. Because my offices are in Newport Beach and Costa Mesa. People are like, oh, okay, so she's another Newport broker or whatever. I live in...
And I expect you to live along the coast and the beach and somewhere there and
Nope.
something,
Nope, I live in Santa Ana.
I knew that, and that is so strange to me. Is it? I'm going to take a wild guess because you live in a really old home, right? In the 40s or
Right.
something.
I live in a post-war home. It's a classic California bungalow.
In a weird way, does that remind you of San Jose?
It does. And I think that's why it resonates for me because it's very similar to where I grew up. So, yeah, it's got the wide streets and the big trees, and neighbors
Yes.
actually talk to each other.
Right. And you probably have sidewalks and those sorts of things here. And
Yeah. I walk my dog, they wave.
yeah, it feels more like the Leave It to Beaver neighborhoods that I grew up in.
Yes, I love it. And I love the cultural diversity. I really do.
And yet, when you say Santa Ana, everybody cringes in Orange County. You know, ooh, Santa Ana,
So,
it's overcrowded,
yeah.
it's poor, it's this, it's old, it's tough, it's rough, it's
Yeah.
not a place. People drive around Santa Ana rather than drive into it. And
They're afraid to run out of gas, right?
Yeah,
It's like,
right.
oh dear God, get me through. Well, when Mick and I first bought the house and we had our friends come over, so many of them, knowing that Mick was in mortgage and I'm in real estate, of course,
Right.
they came from the coast, to come
Of
visit our
course.
house. And they walked in and they, to a person, were like, wow, this is really
You
nice.
can get all this someplace, a yard?
And I'm like, it's a little offensive that you're that surprised. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So you talk about a lot because you talk about how quite often you said Long Beach is a find and some other places you think are finds. Is Santa Ana a find
I think it is.
or off the radar?
I think it's off people's radar, but a lot of people are discovering it. Some of them through me. What becomes old does eventually either go completely fallow or it gets rebirthed.
Right.
And Santa Ana is in the same stage that I saw San Jose in when I lived up there. And San Jose was the same thing. It had a very Mexican culture, a very Latino, a lot of Latino influence, which was wonderful. But people were afraid of the gangs, they were afraid of the violence, and
Right.
all of that. It's so very similar in that regard. But Santa Ana is becoming this cultural hub, and some of the finest restaurants in Orange County are there.
If you haven't been down to 4th Street and all those are kind of cool, a lot of cool, really interesting restaurants
And
going
the
on
art
down there.
scene,
The
right?
art scene.
And the weekend art walks are amazing.
Yeah.
They're putting in a
The
wonderful.
Frida Theater, I'll do a call out for them. They do all these really
Yes.
eclectic films. They've been in here numerous times and stuff.
Yes, exactly. So embracing the arts and the diversity of the community, and a lot of our local colleges have campus offshoots in Santa Ana, which is wonderful because they're embedded in the arts district, and they're building a new train, a railway that's it's vexing people. I know it's a pain. 4th Street is shut down for now, but it's going to connect Santa Ana to Garden Grove, which
Yeah.
is another growth area.
We've had Mayor is it Polito and a few others and stuff here, and they've talked all about that through the years, and everybody kept saying, no, that's not going to happen. It's really happening.
It's happening. It's
yeah.
happening, and I think it's going to be so cool. So when my friends
It's like a
come
light
over,
rail line or a trolley or
Yeah.
something.
I'll be able to walk a couple blocks and hop on the trail and tootle around to my favorite restaurants and go get my drink on and take the rail home.
Well,
Yay.
I'll tell you how envious people are. We had Mayor Barbara Del Glaze, I think that's how you say it, the mayor of Huntington Beach, in here the other day, and she's touting the wonders of Huntington Beach. How can everybody's cool surf city and everything. And one of the things she's hoping is that we'll be lucky enough to connect the future. They're thinking if this thing takes off between Santa Ana and Garden Grove and is a hit, then the next line will come from Garden Grove down over across into Huntington Beach
Right.
and down to the beach. And so she's hoping now to be part of what was created there.
She has a big job ahead of her because in Santa Ana and Garden Grove, we are mostly a lower income constituency
Right.
who are more apt to embrace something that we think is going to raise our communities. All the NIMBYs in Huntington Beach, they're going to fight that tooth and nail. You're not tearing up my street. You're
Yeah.
not going to make me drive 2 more blocks to get to, Albertsons.
Exactly.
She's got a tough row to hoe.
And yet she's on the Orange County Transportation Authority, so she's real big in these regional transportation projects.
And
stuff
she's
here.
right. She's smart. Connecting our communities is
Well, I don't want to
smart.
spend $6, $7, $87. Get everything more and more. I think that's going to push some of the stuff that we've pushed aside for everything.
I
Anyway.
agree.
All right, so we talk about the city you call home. Since it's a show about real estate, tell us what you love about where you live. You gave you a little bit. It kind of
Yeah,
reminds you
we
of home.
kind of covered that, I think. I love the neighbors, and again, my home feels like the homes that I grew up
Do you
in.
know your neighbors? Because that's been my common complaint. I came from the Midwest where the generations live in these neighborhoods. And yes, there are people staying longer in the neighborhoods, but I
Yeah.
still don't know that I know most of my neighbors. We
Yeah.
pull in and we just lock ourselves in, and I still don't know that it's a real communal. I just live in
Yeah.
a tract area.
Well, I know a few of them, and really it's Harley. It's my dog. He is the glue that
There you
holds
go.
the neighborhood together because I've got this giant hunting dog. And, at first people would cross the street and go on the other side, but they've learned he's just a giant baby.
What kind of dog is he?
He's a Louisiana Catahoula.
A Hudawada?
Yeah, I know. It's
I
an
never heard of that breed.
It's an American mixed breed. It's actually the state dog of Louisiana. The
Okay.
Catahoula Indian tribes had domesticated a wild cur, I don't know,
Found some
decades and
wild
decades and
dog
decades
they
ago,
turned it
right?
into a hunting
Yeah,
thing
and
here.
when explorers came from Europe, they brought mastiffs and greyhounds with them that
Yeah.
interbred with this wild cur. So the dog that resulted is very smart, very strong, very fast. So he could run down the street. He would go to the dog park and he would run with the greyhounds.
I'm
You
gonna
know.
have to go look that up. I thought I knew all these obscure dog breeds. I never heard of that one.
But he's big and he's brindle and he's dark and people are afraid.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of the stuff you've had, and you've had lots of different lives, you seem to be one of those people who have lived multiple lives in multiple places. We talked about multiple careers and multiple things. Is there a treasured possession that follows you around?
It's funny. I was thinking about this because obviously I know my own questions.
Yeah.
And I was going to say Harley, my dog, but he's really family. I'm not going to call him a possession. He's my baby. He's my everything.
Yeah, and I appreciate them because they're kids and they're family, and I get that.
Yeah.
But I think possession is just, I think that's the real insight. It's just something that follows you around, that I just have your grandmother's lamp. Somebody was on something with grandmother's cookbook or something. That says something to me.
So the things that follow me around, it's more like I lug them around with me. And that is my father, and this is interesting to me anyway, as well as being a complete brainiac nerd who went to a Rand think tank to literally help solve the world's problems, is also a brilliant artist. He used his whole brain wholly. So he is a brilliant sculptor, and I have 2 bronze busts that my father made.
See, there you go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I would drag those out if there was a fire, if it killed me. It would probably herniate me, but yeah.
Yeah, right. And somehow, wherever you go, those have got to go with you.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, what do you consider your greatest achievement today? There's a tough one. You've achieved a lot of things. Is it
hard.
still to come, or is it? That's what I would say, Mike. It's like your favorite restaurant, the one I haven't been to yet.
Right.
Is your greatest achievement the hill you haven't climbed yet, or
I'm
something?
sure it is still to come. And we'll save that for another broadcast because there's my vocation and there's my avocation, and they're very different.
Yeah.
So there's a book in my future, there's speaking engagements in my future that will deal with that.
I think so. I
so that's
sense
the
that,
next
yeah.
thing. But for now, I think what surprised me most is, in spite of starting my own company and learning various things and overcoming disabilities and the thing I'm most proud of is being a good aunt and a role model to my nieces.
There you go. Wow.
You
Okay,
know,
that's a surprise.
Yeah, well, my nieces and my
How many
great
have you
niece.
got?
I've got 2 nieces, and I have a great niece, and I have 2 great nephews.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And how old, roughly, the ranges of these kids here?
My oldest niece is 40. Her younger sister is in her early 30s. My great niece just turned 22, and my nephews are 20 and 18.
So they're not little kids anymore. or
No, they're
something.
all
You've seen them
grown
turn
people.
into adults and see who they became.
Yeah, and to have, to get the occasional text message on Mother's Day, for example,
Ooh,
and say,
wow, that's something.
you've been really important to me.
You played a role. You
It's
were there.
incredible. Yeah, because not having had kids, I didn't expect that.
It takes a village, as somebody once said. It takes a community. Kids don't raise themselves, and it's hard to raise enough these days. I think you have to rely on. I don't know that we have enough of that extended family anymore here. I don't think
I'm
we
sure
do.
you're right. Yeah, it does take a village. It really does. So, yeah.
All right. Well, that says something. Personal motto?
My nieces all know this. This is totally my personal
Is it
motto.
tattooed on your arm or something?
It should be. I always tell them, use your power for good.
Oh, use your boy. That's in a superhero world. That's it. We all are given a power. Just use it for good.
We have a lot of power. And I think women in particular perhaps don't understand.
No, because for too long they were taught they don't have any power.
We have so much power, ladies.
Yeah.
Use it for good.
Use it for good. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. If somebody wants to do good and tap into your superpowers, how do they get in touch with you?
Well, email is always good if you don't want an immediate response because, I'm always in my car.
Right.
And that's Wendy at realveracity.com. And please-
Real veracity. How do you spell veracity? V-E-R-A.
A-C-I-T-Y.
Okay. Real veracity. Why that name? Veracity,
Veracity
means truth.
means truth.
Right.
Yeah, I'm all about the truth. And real is a play on real estate, but real truth doesn't suck either.
No.
My website's realveracity.com.
And we live in
Please
a
go
world
there.
where we don't think there is any real truth anymore here.
Yeah, yeah. But if anybody wants to call me, call me. It's 949-870-2424. And of course, you can always listen to my podcasts wherever you want to listen to your podcast.
Yeah, please
the
do.
show is This Week with Wendy.
And it's more than just real estate. It really is kind of a look at this kind of feel. I'm not sure. I can't describe. How would you describe the show? It is kind of a warm feeling, a home feeling to it. I didn't expect that.
It's a many splendored thing, you know?
Love is a many splendored thing.
But yeah, it's a heavily nuanced thing. It's home. It's your nest. It's your investment. If done properly, it's going to help you be a better human and leave a better legacy for those behind. So it's a highly nuanced thing, and that's why I will never be bored with what I do.
Well, and it's unpredictable. That's what I like. So you never know what's coming next.
There's
It
that.
really is your world, and welcome to it here. And we're grateful to be part of it here at OC Talk Radio. Thank you so much for doing this and for letting us spend a moment. I know there's always an impulse to bring guests in and tell more. And once in a while, though, we got to tell our stories here. And I think you did a good job.
If this is my show, people should probably know who I am. So I hope that this helped. I welcome feedback.
All right. Take us out. Any final thoughts here?
No, just stay tuned next week and listen to This Week with Wendy wherever you like to listen to your favorite podcasts.
Thanks.
Take care.